Hello and good morning. I'm G. Ramachandran, GR Ramach to the world. I'm here to talk about the Indian economy, and today is the 1st of January 2024. Happy New Year. I'm from the College of Engineering, Guindy, from the class of 1978. We had met recently to celebrate 50 years of walking into the haloed College of Engineering, Guindy, the hub, the center of Anna University. Anna University is an engineering institution ranked in the global QS rankings at about 400 plus, but in the context of India, it's 10th. 7 IITs, then the Indian Institute of Science, and then Delhi, and here we have Anna University. I'm fundamentally a mechanical engineer and an industrial engineer, but I also practice investment banking and serve the investment management community. We also are data engineers. We have data for a comprehensive monetary policy analysis, fiscal policy analysis, taxation policies for several of our investment clients, both in the investment banking industry and in the investment management industry. So we are driven by data, and to a large extent our data covers 67 countries, and India is of course a jewel in the crown. And we've been in the Indian economy as data managers, data gatherers, and data disseminators for a very long time. I've been in manufacturing, and then I worked with the UTI Securities, Unit Trust of India Securities, as Senior Vice President, heralding, making it possible, spearheading India's disinvestment process. The Navratna report is part of our work, along with a team led by Mr. Mohan Kumar Khanna. Wonderful team. And in 1997, I was ranked amongst the top influential thinkers and doers in India. So my emphasis is on doing. I'm basically an engineer, but I believe I understand economics sufficiently well to present to you what India is up to. India is practicing what is seen to be necessarily the economics of necessity. We are a very difficult economy to manage and to take forward. A large part of the determinants rest with the state governments, unlike many other economies where it's possible to lead it from the top. The Indian economy works from the bottom, and the economics of necessity has to address the constitutional issues in the context of who does what. So the state governments actually are the principal determinants of the Indian economy. And then we have the central governments or the union list from the constitution, which make it possible for the state governments to perform. So effectively, India is a multi-tiered economy in the context of policy making and in the context of action itself. But we are all part of the economic activity process, either as part of the production function or as part of the consumption function, and sometimes both. If you take a household as the principal economic engine, almost all households constitute components which belong to the production function and simultaneously to the consumption function. So to that extent, we are masters in understanding the purchasing power, incomes, and what makes it possible for households to live in India. And that's the reason why I say that the state governments are the principal determinants of the economy, the economic activity here, maybe up to 75%. What more? From economics of necessity, we also understand economics of possibility. What the government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been doing simultaneously is to address all the issues pertinent to economics of necessity, and then make it possible for us to understand more the avenues, the real options which can take the economy forward in the future. From there, economics of opportunity. So the 3 layers of economic policy making and action: economics of necessity, economics of possibility, and economics of opportunity. All these 3 layers have found tremendous traction within the Indian economy. But you would have missed out a lot if you looked at it, especially from the economics of opportunity, where some inanities have been mouthed, especially by the Western press and armchair economists who teach in one or more universities in the United States of America fundamentally thinking that everything has to be seen from the perspective of economics of opportunity. Thus, many economists, some of them are engineers, say that India should not do what China does, and China is the manufacturing engine of the global economy, and India should be into services. I believe that has to be discarded, discounted, definitely discredited, because most services that constitute the Indian economy are non-tradables. Non-tradables are those which do not cross borders in the context of either having to be competitive, because they're irrelevant to the global economy, at the same time to earn what we typically say is foreign exchange. So the non-tradables are very important, and what the government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi has been doing is to address the non-tradables very comprehensively. So let's say this again. We can look at the economy in the context of three layers: economics of necessity, economics of possibility, and economics of opportunity. And simultaneously, we can classify the Indian economy or any economy into tradables and non-tradables. And within this framework, we can now insert the primary economy, the manufacturing economy, and the services economy, which is great. And I wrote about the progression to prosperity 20 years ago. We are now in January 2024. In January 2004, on the 10th anniversary of the Hindu Business Line, I had written an article called The Progression to Prosperity. India cannot have a roaring, non-tradable sector in services if it were weak in the primary sector and the manufacturing sector. Who is your customer? You can't have a customer in some other country. So the non-tradable sector has to have customers, consumers within the Indian economy, and those consumers need to have incomes. So they either belong to the primary sector, farming and mining, or into manufacturing, or both. And you can't have a roaring manufacturing economy if you do not have a roaring, solid, robust primary sector. So what we have accomplished in the last 20 years, since 2014, in the context of my analysis of this government's policies, and in general from 2004, is that India has definitely come of age. It's been paying attention to the primary sector, and consequently there's been robust growth, resilience in the manufacturing sector, and therefore feeding the possibilities and the opportunities in the non-tradable services sector. If you're part of the global economic media that does not know the details, the building components of the Indian economy, you're likely to understand only things from the top, which is basically incorrect. And you would say that India is doing this, China is doing that, Mexico does that, Brazil does that, Russia does that. I think that's incorrect. Ultimately, everyone runs an economy for our necessities. I work so that I can eat. I'm not worried about what the household in China does. That's a very different story for anybody. But to the global media, they may often make those comparisons. And in the context of the normatives that the economists that teach in the United States of America do, they often think that China should specialize or would succeed as a specialist in manufacturing, whereas India should pay attention to services. But manufactured goods belong to tradables, but a very large part of the services sector ultimately is within the walls, the boundaries of India, non-tradables. And you can't grow the non-tradable sector without growing India's primary sector and the manufacturing sector. This is exactly what Atmanirbhar has done. Atmanirbhar has made it possible for both coping with the pressures of COVID, at the same time feeding the non-tradable. So as a consequence, a large number of rural households which do not own land, the landless rural poor, have found enormous employment, oftentimes as self-employed craftspersons, artisans and professionals. This the Western press very frequently ignores because they see employment as part of the organized sector, which is of course their outlook, but we need to look at India in the context of what we need, the economics of necessity. So India has pursued the economics of necessity with a certain vigor, unprecedented vigor, which has enabled it to keep growing at a handsome number, say 6.5%, which, my friend, the current Chief Economic Advisor, Dr. V. Anantha Nageswaran, says is a given now. It's a backstop number. It's wonderful that the Chief Economic Advisor can say with a certain amount of modesty and confidence that 6.5% growth for India is now a given. We need to do better than that. And it's in that context we need to look at the economics of possibility and the economics of opportunity. So, three different simultaneous layers of economic activity, the classifications of tradables and non-tradables, and then you can't look at rural households to always mean farmers, not at all. It would be incorrect. The Indian rural sector comprises households which own land and then those that don't. They are the rural poor, they have no land, but they work with skills. And all these households have done well. The bottom third of the Indian households pyramid has done extremely well, especially since 2019, much before COVID came to ravage the Indian economy. So, the first 5 years of the government led by Prime Minister Narendra Modi, that's between 2014 and 2019, made it possible for rural households to gain confidence in working, regardless of whether they owned land or not, which is fundamentally good. The second part is manufacturing. India actually has a large number of manufacturing institutions, very tiny, the MSMEs, very small. They make things that serve the bigger part of the Indian manufacturing sector. At the same time, they make those finished components which rural industry, rural households use. So a large number of MSMEs actually make complete finished goods, and they are in the manufacturing sector. Therefore, where do they add value? In April 2020, my team had written that India is a great economy because a tremendous amount of value seeding, value creation, and value harvesting, and let me also add value distribution, takes place within about 3.5 kilometers radius of most rural economic hubs. So the distances that they need to travel is not much, and therefore in a way they are non-tradables. They serve the local economy with a great amount of wisdom and vigor. Therefore Atmanirbhar is not really about make in India in the context of those things which we are familiar as tradables across global boundaries. Not really. Atmanirbhar is also about gaining confidence in manufacturing within those local economies, say a diameter of 7 kilometers, to make it possible for more number of rural households without land to participate. And if you are into manufacturing at that level, obviously the services industry gets triggered and spurred. So the primary sector, the manufacturing sector, and the services sector really are part of a pyramid. Apart from one pyramid called economics of necessity, economics of possibility, economics of opportunity, we have another pyramid. The primary sector at the bottom, then the manufacturing sector, and at the top, the services sector. A large part of it is non-tradable. So how do people actually gain more incomes? The primary sector is not the place where you make the most money. Great. And then you move to the manufactured sector, then services. So people would have to move upwards. They need to have mobility. You can't have too many people extract incomes from 1 hectare of land. So we cannot have too many people in farming extract value from an acre of land. So you need to move out households that own land and extract incomes and value. So where do they go? They need to go into those opportunities in manufacturing and services which do not require the ownership of land. And this has been happening too. And it's in order to enable this that India had enacted farm laws in 2020, which had to be unfortunately revoked in 2021 November. Maybe some wisdom will again come back and then they would become a possibility. Therefore, when I say that the 6.5% economic growth rate estimated and asserted by Dr. V. Anantha Nageswaran is a backstop number is absolutely credible. India's economy would grow at rates higher than 6.5% year on. The Western media tends to look at India as one big block. It's incorrect because they know very little about the details. They tend to kind of fish at the top, skim and present the data as Modi's India, which is often wrong because there's much activity at the bottom, and what happens at the bottom depends on the administrative vigor and the wisdom of the local governments. And India's done very well. Despite not having a single party govern all the states, there's been tremendous vitality in the context of governance, regardless of which state it is. Consider Tamil Nadu, consider Punjab, consider West Bengal. These are not states governed by the Bharatiya Janata Party. Nevertheless, they've been contributing to the economy very handsomely. And that's what is very remarkable about the Indian economy, that everything now is aligned. Alignment in the context of necessity, possibility, opportunity. The alignment in the context of understanding the non-tradables and then the tradables. And then understanding what the state government should do, what the central government should do, and what the Reserve Bank of India should do. So there's been a tremendous amount of alignment in the Indian economy since 2014 and made a far more vital force after COVID came in 2020. So effectively, India now presents a very robust, multi-factor economy with tremendous resourcefulness and resilience. The robustness is incredible. Let me say this once more, the 6.5% is a backstop number. The Indian economy should do better. Thus, the second part is, of course, India is not competing with other economies of the world. That's a Western view, probably a European Union view where they do simultaneously very similar things. And therefore they say we are competing. I don't think India is competing. India used to struggle to feed its own people, to clothe them, to make homes possible for them, and education, including other facilities, hygiene, infrastructure. So the Indian economy is inward looking, and happily so. India will need to do what it has to do to serve, as our Prime Minister says, 140 crore people. Incidentally, yesterday's Mann Ki Baat, episode 108, very clearly emphasizes how we are an inward-looking economy, paying attention to our innovation, to our startups, to our mental health, and we are on the move. And this may not be a very credible thing when you keep looking at the Indian economy from the top, but you need to look at the Indian economy from the bottom. For example, my team created what's known as the Index of Economic Activity, IEA, way back in 1999, and we can very clearly see how the policy framework of India as one country and then the administrative ease with which the state governments enable the Indian economy to function actually have a fantastic impact on each district's linkages. So India is not a monolithic whole. That's something very absurd. You should not ever look at India being one big black box and then you can comment on it. That's not right. Therefore, the opportunities are immense. Every district, every state, and then finally the economy has tremendous potential to be very dissimilar, therefore very diversified, and therefore producing a certain portfolio effect for the Indian economy, which other economies, tinier economies, may not actually ever get because they are one across. Whereas India is many things. There's skiing, there's tourism, there's hospitality, manufacturing, different kinds of food, agroclimatic zones. There are some which have a marine base, they have the waterline, the coastways. So everything in India is a bit different from what other parts of India are. Therefore, you should pay attention to the details. Don't rush to conclusions. Don't say this is Modi's India doing. This India's India doing. Every Indian's India is responding first to the inner necessities. We have to live and we'd like to live nicely with a certain kind of lifestyle expectations and longevity. We are going to be there with education, food, shelter, clothing, local infrastructure, Wi-Fi, 5G, everything, maybe 6G, everything. Then possibility. Everyone's very keen to educate the next generation so that Keep this while you pursue something else. That's the possibility part. And simultaneously look at opportunity. Our Confederation of Indian Industry is doing a fantastic job. Everything, our banks, our investment banks, our equity research firms are all providing constructive windows into the external world, and our educational institutions too are providing the necessary lens, the window and the backdrop to tell students where they could be over the next 5 years and next 10 years. It's not really a political process. It's actually a human process at work where everyone in India is now looking forward to something better, something lovely, something safer than what we were yesterday. So the Indian economy is a very vibrant economy now. We need to take note on this New Year's Day, January 1st, 2024. We need to say that many things are at play and all those things are aligned neatly. And a summary, India comprises multiple economic hubs and none of them is very similar. They're all dissimilar. And the second part is each one of them responds to multiple factors which are in the hands of the state government, not really the central government. The second part is the non-tradables are a very important component, A, of drag and of possibility. If you take away households from the dependence on the primary sector, the income growth is going to be fantastic. And Atmanirbhar has worked marvelously, not because of the supply chain breakages because of COVID, not at all. Not because of the Ukraine-Russia conflict, not because of what's going on in West Asia. India understood that value addition is a local activity and feeding both the production function and the consumption function, and India's taken charge of that. Finally, we understand that as we move forward, our educated human capital with a fantastic view of both leadership and operations in the global tradable sector, they would be leading the economy. So prepare yourself. When you go to university, when you go to school, prepare yourself. Is there something personal in this context that I am doing to make it all possible? Yes. I am a trustee of the Scientific Research Association for Economics and Finance, SRAEF. I plan to augment, to complement the wonderful work of NCAER, National Council of Applied Economic Research. Why so? Economics is an activity that involves each one of us. It's not to be done from the ivory tower, not at all. Economics happens, and our school children, our college children, our school teachers, our college teachers, our university students, our university professors should all get involved in understanding what drives our economy, because when our economy does well, we do well at the level of every household. And that is how India would become a developed economy by 2047. So we'll be formally launching SRAEF, Scientific Research Association for Economics and Finance, to augment all of this in my private capacity as a trustee, and also to look at what Kriya Shakti has been doing since 2019. Have a great year. 2024 is the beginning of great things, and I'll be seeing you very frequently.